Francisco treat.
Time now for Niner Talk Central. Here's DeSimone and Turron Davenport.
Yeah, boy. You know what that means.
Yeah, I do, man.
It's night tonight. Dylan, what's up, man? NinerTalkCentral, we're here. What's good with you, man?
Oh, man, it's good. Good to bring in another week. Yeah, how you doing, man?
Oh, man, I'm great, man. You know, I'm sure you can hear the smile on my face as soon as I hear the music. That lets me know what it is. Michelle Beisner, Mindi, Bach coming on today. Man, I love it. I'm ready to go. Good to have a couple things to kind of brighten this day up, man. You know, some bad 49er news today, and let's get right into the injury report.
Yep.
Looks like Patrick Willis is diagnosed with a slight fracture in his right hand. What are your thoughts on that?
You know, I you never want to hear like fracture or any deeming words like that. But I think the fact of the matter is we've seen Patrick play with this injury. We drafted him with this kind of injury. He's always been able to play through it. I mean, it's how he got his nickname Bam Bam. It's because he was always running around the field with a club on his wrist. So, I mean, and if he was going to get a fracture anywhere, you gotta think that hand of all places on his body is the best place to kind of get a fracture.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with you. I think that's going to be something that won't be a major factor. Of course, it's going to be uncomfortable, but, you know, he'll probably have that club on. I highly doubt that he'll see any action in the preseason. I think they're going to do everything they can to let that heal. So it's going to be interesting how he's going to be as far as the game shape side of things is coming, especially against the Packers, you know. But one thing that you have to think about from last year, the season opener, he came off the field a lot in that dime package, and our guy Parrish Cox came in, and you know the linebacker that we had in the middle was Bowman, who coincidentally had suffered a groin injury, but I think that's something that he'll be able to come back from, and I think this team will still be fine.
Yeah, it's a lot of the aches and pains and kind of getting back into the groove of football. They've been piling up all over the league. It does look like San Francisco has more of these injuries, but I guess that's the cost of our, just having a big team. Like, we have a very big football team, so, we practice harder.
Yeah, and you talk about some of the more of the injuries. I mean, you got Quentin Patton with the finger injury. You got Jonathan Goodwin and Alden Smith. They sat out practice with an undisclosed injury. We don't know what that is, but thing that I like about the Goodwin injury is that you got to see Kilgore a little bit playing some center, and he looked pretty good. And you got to see Adam Snyder as well, a guy that I think was a really good pickup. Of course, the wide receiver position is something that we have an extra close eye on with Kyle Williams and A.J. Jenkins both suffering the hamstring injury. But above all else, the news today, man, is definitely something that we want to talk to Mindi Bach about. And, man, I just, I shoot a prayer up there for Culliver. I pray that he's okay. You hate to see a player going off the field in tears as he did and getting carted off the field in the manner that he did. So that could be an injury, a very significant one. That's one that could actually hurt this football team.
Yeah, this is something to worry about. The fact was that San Francisco already was trying to beef up their secondary. They were looking for corners. There's been the most activity around that position group, and then you possibly lose. We don't know yet, but they're easily their best cornerback, their best cover cornerback. Culliver, he's always out there. He played 63% of the snaps last year, and he's been productive. He's been excellent. So it's going to be hard to replace him, but if anybody's going to do it, it has to be Nnamdi Asomugha. they're built similarly. They're the only long-bodied corners, man corners on the team, really. Um, so you now everybody, all eyes are on Asamoah until we find out what happens with Culliver.
Yeah, all eyes will be on Asamoah, and he's strung together 3 or 4 really good practices. So I'm very pleased with what he's able to do. But see, here's the thing: you got to remember, Namdi was always successful from the right side. So Culliver is a left corner. Now, to some, that's not really a big thing, but think about it. If you write with your right hand and somebody tells you to write with your left, it is more difficult. Not everybody can play both sides. And that's the thing with Namdi. Me personally, I would bump T Brown
Mm-hmm.
over to the left side because we've already seen how not being in the most ideal situation can affect Namdi. We saw that from his experience in Philadelphia. And I think that in order for him to be successful, they really are going to need to make the transition as easy as possible for him, meaning he needs to play in the familiar place that he's normally played, and that's right corner. So I mean, yeah, it is going to fall on Namdi, but I think where it's going to fall on Namdi is his ability to step in to the right corner position, and T Brown I think will be the one that they move to the other side. Because honestly, I have seen T Brown play both sides, especially in the situations where they lock Carlos Rogers up in man on somebody like say a Victor Cruz or Amendola like he's been assigned to. So it's going to be interesting, and we have to remember that this left corner slot is actually Carlos Rogers' spot. But when we go into the nickel package, he bumps into the slot, into the nickel to cover the slot receiver, and that's when Culliver will come in and play left corner. So it's going to be interesting. I think that there's some other guys on the roster that could definitely step up. We talked about Parrish Cox. Tremaine Brock is another guy that I think right now is taking is going to take the first team reps at left corner. So I don't know, man. We'll see what happens, but I definitely want to see how the next practice goes and who they line up there with the first team.
Yeah, no, I agree with a lot of that. I agreed with the moving Terrell Brown over. So, yeah, I really don't have much to add. So, I mean, yeah, I think if anything, if we're going to see something, Terrell Brown's going to flip to that side. He is younger. He's earlier in his career, and I think he'll be more adaptable while they cater to Namdi.
So let's take a look at just in case they were to actually go ahead and venture into the free agent class. You a couple shows ago, you mentioned Rasheem Mathis as a guy that they could look at. That's definitely an option. I'm just looking at the free agent corners that are out there. You got Rasheem Mathis. You got go figure, Shante Spencer. That's not somebody I would sign, but he's out there. Cedric Griffin. Terrence McGee is an interesting one. He's a speed guy. I don't know that I would do that. I tell you, the one that really stood out the most to me was Stanford Route. I'm curious why he's not on the team, and I'm not saying go out and sign him and make it happen right away, but he may be somebody you look at for depth. But are there any guys that stand up for you?
I had thought about Rasheen. Like I said, it had come up in an article that the Patriots were going to take a look at him. But that's the reason I kind of think that right now you need to actually go back a couple weeks and maybe look at Eric Wright again. I think he's, talent-wise and having played recently, I think that that's probably the best signing they can make.
Yeah, I mean, Eric Wright is clearly the best signing that they can make. We'll see what happens. He has the whole legal issue and the question of a suspension hanging over his head. But the thing that's really good about that situation, maybe not good for Eric Wright personally, but good for the 49ers, is he is a high reward player that will bring a low risk on the financial side of things.
Mm-hmm.
You know, really the money in the debacle with Terrell Brown and his agent is actually what it would cost to sign Eric Wright. And you just look at the whole money side of things, and you have to keep that in mind. So I think he would probably be one of the less expensive options, and definitely a high reward. The guy could play. We talked about it. He definitely could play. I mean, yes, he does have his lapses at some time, but he's a good corner. And I mean, he's somebody that could be a big play guy. He had a long interception return last year. And again, it goes back to what he brings. He can cover the slot. Not so sure about how he would be playing on the left side or right side. I've sometimes you have those corners that can only play one side, but I don't think that that's something that would have to be considered with Eric Wright. I wouldn't think that, and just simply because he's able to play to cover the slot. I mean, if you could cover the slot with that two-way go and all that room in the middle of the field, I'm sure that you could flip flop from left to right on the outside.
You know, that's funny. They San Francisco needs help in both covering the slot, and they need help on the boundary now that Culver might be out. Um, Especially with all the new weapons in the division, and we talked about this before. A lot of buzz coming out now that training camps are out. A lot of buzz is coming from St. Louis and what their receivers have been doing, and how dynamic and explosive this offense is going to look because. Well, we know what St. Louis's offense was before when they would play us. It was they would just kind of chip away at you, hoping to kind of stay on the field for as long as they can, and there was no real threat from their offense. This year, they're going to be really threatening, and that's I think who's on San Francisco's mind in terms of who they need to defend.
Well, yeah, I mean, you look at it. Listen, Tavon Austin, one of my favorite guys in the draft, so explosive. Everybody is focusing on that, but let me tell you something. Stedman Bailey is an NFL ready receiver. He's more polished than Tavon Austin is, and that guy he's ready to go. But not only that, you got Chris Givens, who last year he had 5 straight games with a catch of over 50 yards. That's big play right there, man. That's big play ability. So this team is definitely set up to be able to strike quick. They brought in Jared Cook to play the slot position. They're ready to go. And Sam Bradford, he set a record for most passes in a season by a rookie. So it's not like throwing the ball is something that's new to him. Now, they brought in Jake Long, so they'll be able to keep him upright. I think that team is going to be good. They're going to be really good. And, you look at before the way that they played the 49ers, they definitely, their best player on offense was Steven Jackson. So, of course, they relied on him to use a Hank Stram term, matriculate the ball down the field. But that's not going to be something that's going to happen as much in this type of offense because they have so many playmakers on the outside and all over the place. So I'm going to be looking at the Rams closely. And we have Michelle Beisner is going to come on, and she happened to be at the Rams camp. So that's going to be interesting talking to her about that. And you know what, Dylan? Let's go ahead to a break, and we'll be back with Michelle.
Cigar fans, check out fifthdowncigar.com and enter the coupon code PFC to get 10% off your order. Lots of nice high-end cigars. That's fifthdowncigar.com. Enter the code PFC for 10% off your order.
And Destiny, Charlie's Angels, come on. Question, tell me what you think about me.
What's going on, guys? Welcome back to Niner Talk Central. We have a very special guest with us. We have Michelle Beisner from NFL Network. Hey, Michelle, how you doing?
Hey, I'm good, guys. How are you?
We're great.
All right.
We're great.
You know it's a special guest when we play a theme song for it. Check that out.
Yeah, that's
I was wondering if that was my lead-in song. That's my up-to-bat song. Yes, I liked it.
Oh, you gotta step up to the plate. Every
You didn't
superhero
disappoint.
has theme music.
There you go. There you go.
Well, yeah, Michelle, we wanted to, just, we're gearing up for the season here. You've been a big part of everything NFL Network is doing, and we wanted to actually first kind of ask you about the New Era women's apparel line that you've been just grinding and working hard for. Can you tell us a bit about what you've been doing?
Yeah, so we just did a big shoot in New York in April, and they are launching what's, I mean, you guys know all about their lids and their caps and whatnot, and how great they are. But they are now getting into women's apparel, and a lot of the stuff is great. I mean, it's stuff that I would wear, it's stuff that I would gift to anyone, and I strongly will be pushing it this season because it's super comfortable, lightweight, stylish, everything that, I think a woman, especially that loves the NFL, would want to sport during the Sunday. There's great stuff. You guys have special women in your life, I'm sure. This is what you need to do for them. You need to dress them appropriately, just kind of, dazzle them with New Era gear from head to toe.
I like that. Speaking of New Era gear from head to toe, I like the vintage 49er shirt that you had on, but, I had to kind of poke fun at you a little bit because on your Twitter page you got the Seahawks shirt. What's that deal?
I mean, come on. I work for NFL Network. I don't work for one team. You know that. I've got love for everyone in the NFC West, and I have a lot of love for the 49ers. As you guys know, I spend a tremendous amount of time up there with that team, although surprisingly I haven't been there during my training camp tour, which is a bit of a shock to me and to my buddies up there. We've kind of been back and forth talking with the PR guys and some of the guys at 49ers camp just wondering why I haven't made that stop. But that's I represent all the NFC West, mostly NFC West, AFC West, proudly. I wear it all loud and proud.
All right, yeah. I can't knock you for that.
You can appreciate that. Come on.
Yes, I definitely can. But speaking of the NFC West and your training camp tour, you were in St. Louis recently at their camp, and I definitely got a good laugh out of you hitting that sled. That was one of the classic things I've seen for any interview, especially by a lady reporter. So I give you props for that.
Well, thank you. Did you agree with the grade that Laurinaitis gave me? And I told him to shoot me straight. I didn't want him to go soft. I didn't want him to be nice. I wanted him to just shoot straight from the hip and give it to me. But a .5?
Right.
Is that? 0.5, I mean, come on. Was that fair? Do you guys agree with that? I at least deserve to just balance out at a straight 0.
My 2 cents, Michelle, was you could have had a better teacher if you actually were in Santa Clara. You could have had 2 better teachers if you were in Santa Clara.
Yes, exactly. Although he did give me an 8 or a 9, I believe he said, for effort. So that says something.
Yeah, there you go. And you got to get the E for effort for willing to go to the weight room, so I give you that. So
he's great, though, by the way. I mean, there are so many good guys in the NFL, and a lot of, I think, that gets kind of, glossed over by some of the negative news that we talk about. James Laurinaitis and most of the guys that we all deal with, as you guys know, are really good guys, but he is certainly one of the good ones. I mean, just a stand-up, down-to-earth, kind of, straightforward, honest, good man, and I appreciate that so much.
That's a great point that you're making, because it is unfortunate that as soon as something goes wrong, it's just all over the place. And I think the thing that's really good about the NFL, you take a guy, just to look at the 49ers, you take a guy like a Navarro Bowman, who got into trouble when he was younger, and you look at him now, there are no negative stories or anything coming out in regards to this guy. Just this summer, I'm on the East Coast, and just an hour and a half away from me, he did the football camp for the kids in his area, in the Maryland area. And, I mean, it's really good for the kids to be able to interact with these players, and I got to give him props on that. So
I agree 100%. I think that maybe it's just something that goes without saying where, we only, and this is just the way that the news is and the media is, and we always highlight the bad, and you turn on your television and you're going to see, you're going to see 10 out of 10 stories about something negative that happened. But it's really important to give props to those guys that are doing great things in the community, and they're just stand-up guys on the field and off the field. And, Navarro Bowman's one of them. But like you're saying, the majority of these guys are. And
Every team.
that needs to be said just as much as everything else and all the negative kind of stories that we draw our focus and attention to. You know, we need to shed some light on what's positive about these guys and everything that they do that is good for the sport and for their community.
For sure. That's the truth. So I wanted to get a couple questions in regards to the Rams, specifically two of their rookie receivers. Because I'll tell you, Tavon Austin is a guy that I fell in love with before the draft. And I prayed that he wouldn't go to St. Louis, but unfortunately he did. And right along with him was Stedman Bailey, who is one of my other favorite receivers in the draft. So, you know, it's clear, as shown by the cheers when Tavon got on the field, these Rams fans, they're very excited about him. But a lot of them don't realize how good of a player Stedman Bailey is. How did those guys look at camp?
I mean, unbelievable. I mean, you're hitting the nail right on the head. I mean, they are truly beyond their years as far as just their ability to grasp the playbook. And I actually talked with Coach Fisher following practice yesterday, and he was amazed by how both those guys were able to grasp the playbook and their understanding of football concepts. Specifically, you know, Austin we talked more about because he's a guy that is, you know, at 5'8", he's standing really tall amongst that group of receivers and making huge impressions at Rams Park. He steps up to the line and people are going crazy. I mean, he walks onto the field and fans are going nuts. And everyone there is just enamored by what these two young guys have done. I was actually told a story about Les Snead, general manager Les Snead, was talking to someone yesterday, and I guess Cortland Finnegan made a big to-do and told Les Snead, Tavon Austin is the greatest football player that I've ever been around.
Wow.
And Les said, come on, man. I mean, really? He said, he is without a doubt the greatest football player that I have ever been around. That speaks massive volumes with a guy like Cortland Finnegan saying something like that for, you know, just as good as he is in what a ball hawk in the secondary he is and the guys that he faces. For him to say that speaks volumes. And Coach Fisher, again, you know, Bailey's great, but we talked specifically about Austin yesterday. He compared the explosiveness and the speed to Chris Johnson. And, you know, that's just a huge compliment for Tavon. And I talked to Austin yesterday, and he's just a really humbled guy who wants to get out there and he wants to do whatever he can to help the team. And I think any rookie is going to say that, but you can really get the sense that this is a team guy. This is not a flashy receiver that you've seen a lot of the wide receivers. I mean, he really just is a young guy that's hungry and that wants to be there to help the greater good of the team and not so much himself.
And that's probably why they took him so high. I mean, he was a guy you could build a team around. And even more so, you know, just to add on to that, the fact that the NFL today is kind of built for guys like him. I mean, he's coming in at a great time. If he had come in some years back, you know, he might have washed out. But he's got an opportunity to have a great career.
Oh, for sure. You know, and I think you look at, you know, and to shift it a little bit, but in the same respect to what we're talking about, look at this Rams offense now. It's different because they've got weapons on the outside. And this was Steven Jackson's team for however many years he was there, 8, you know, something like that, maybe longer. But that was his team, and their offense ran very differently. This is a much different team now, a much different offense. And for Sam Bradford, what a gift for him to be able to go into a season and have a year of the same system under his belt. But even though he's got now kind of a 2 years with Brian Schottenheimer in the same system, they're throwing different looks every which way. And James Laurinaitis yesterday was telling me it's going to be scary. I mean, you know, they're stepping up. They're doing things that we're having a hard time reading, and that's not the way the Rams offense used to operate and run. So it's exciting. I mean, the Rams are a team to watch. They are a team to look out for. They are not far behind the curve of being a serious contender. And I would not be surprised if we saw, you know, 3 NFC West teams in the playoffs.
Wow.
If not this year, for sure next year.
I agree 100%. It's
Yeah.
funny you say that because right before you got on, that's what we were talking about, the new explosiveness that this Rams offense has and the fact that they don't have
Yeah.
to just methodically drive the ball down the field. They don't have to rely on Steven Jackson. He's gone. And you look at it now, outside, you have some weapons. You know, Chris Gibbons. I'm not sure how he looked at practice, but you look at
It was
last year. I
great.
mentioned it. You know, 5 catches of over, or 5 games with a catch of over 50 yards. That's
Yep.
explosiveness. They have speed all over the place. This is definitely a team that should be noticed. And I agree with you. I expect actually 3 teams to come out of the NFC West and go to the playoffs.
Well, and you can't talk about explosiveness and speed and just complete beast mode and natural athleticism without talking about Jared Cook. I mean, he is massive, and his reach and his birth and what he can do. I mean, it's again, talking with Les Snead, he's like the guy can just rebound all day. And that's what you want. I mean, you've got a deep threat there, and you have this hybrid player that can kind of slot into Danny Amendola's spot, and he can run, he can block, he can catch. He is a hybrid player that is going to, in this offense, maybe he wasn't utilized correctly in Tennessee in years prior, but in this offense, you got to watch out for Jared Cook.
Yeah, I liked him in Tennessee. I liked him a lot in Tennessee. He reminds me a lot of Marcel Reese in Oakland in the fact that he's big, he's strong, he's fast, and he can really do anything that you ask him to do on offense. So he's a chess piece.
Yeah, I mean, he's just massive. I mean, watching him yesterday, being that up close, he just dominates. And to see, like, it's really just interesting from just a visual and just an aesthetic standpoint, seeing Jared Cook, who's 6'4", 6'5", and then seeing Tamon Austin, who's 5'8", and both of them are just mind blowing to watch. I'm telling you, I'm like you guys. I'm very impressed with what the Rams are putting together and the job that Les Snead and Jeff Fisher and that whole team has done. It's going to be a good year for them. It's only going up from here on out.
Well, speaking of massive players, I wanted to get your touch on Lawrence Okoye as far as a national story goes. That's kind of been interesting to everybody, even outside the 49ers. What have you heard about him, and what are your thoughts on that whole situation?
I covered a lot of the regional combines this year, and I was down in Dallas, and I covered the Super Regional Combine, and I interviewed Lawrence Okoye. We sat down and we had a one-on-one exchange, and he is extraordinarily bright. He is a natural, he's just raw talent, and he's one of those guys. I mean, he picked up a discus and just decided at age 18 that this is what I'm going to do, and he did it. Just, kind of off a whim where he said, I'm just going to try this, and now he's, and then you blink your eyes and he's an he's an Olympian. This is a guy that, he's very green. He doesn't know American football, but he's got a ton of experience with his early years playing rugby. And I think personally, I would be shocked if somebody like that, somebody that is just such a dedicated and focused student of whatever he puts his mind to, I would be shocked if he didn't land somewhere and he didn't play. I was blown away by his level of intelligence and just by his football smarts and talk about a guy who's got just massive size and strength. It's kind of shocking when you first see him. He's a big dude.
I like that you bring up the IQ too, because I think that's kind of contingent on his ability to kind of pick everything up. I mean, it's a complex sport, but all the players so far in camp have raved about his intelligence. Maybe his technique isn't perfect yet, but his ability to learn and pick things up so quickly is really impressive.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that's when I talked to him at the Super Regional Combine, he had been talking to a number of different teams, and then to go and see him at rookie minicamp in San Francisco and chat with him there and to kind of see just the progress that he's made in that short, I think it was just like a span of 2 months or a month or whatever it was, but a very short period of time. I was beyond impressed at what he was already been able to accomplish. And, And like I said, I would be shocked if he didn't land somewhere and if he wasn't playing in the NFL.
Well, he couldn't have landed in a better spot. He has one of the best defensive
Right?
lineman coaches. So I love Tom Sula. You know, I think of him. He reminds me of the Mario brothers, but just the way he looks.
Yeah, exactly.
So you've done a lot of interviews, and I know which one really stands out to me, and that would be the 2 Chainz interview where he video bombed your Crabtree one. What interview would you say is your most memorable one?
Well, that was a pretty good one. I mean, I was certainly not expecting that. And, you know, Crab is always, you know, great, and that was such a great game for him. But then Carlos Rogers jumps in the mix, and all of a sudden 2 Chainz is there. And that's just one of those moments where you just have to roll with it. And I loved it. It's like one of those, that's the interview that you call NFL Network and you go, can you please peel that off so I can get that for my reel? Because that's just one that you want to have. I mean, a lot of these guys are, I remember interviewing, one of a fun one that I remember years ago, though, was when Peyton Manning hosted Saturday Night Live the first time.
Wow.
I think he's only done once, actually, and maybe guest appearance with his brother. But that, I was there when he was going through his dress rehearsal. And I think it's well documented just how charismatic he is, and you know what kind of just great comedic timing he has, and but it was funny to see him. It was interesting to see him out of his element and to see him kind of push his way and fight through that and come out of the back and like shining, and he had everyone cracking up at the end of it. So that was kind of a fun experience to see that. But guys that you know, Adrian Peterson is always so great. The majority of the guys that I interview, and it's tough too because I'm in a position most times where at the end of games, you've got to figure out who you're interviewing depending on how the game is dictated. So You don't really know, and you can't really script out who you're going to get or what you're going to do until you're in that moment. And it's tough to get like real raw kind of emotion or moments out of these guys when you're looking at, you know, 3 minutes under the clock and you've got 3 questions with him and he's off to the next network. But somebody that I was so impressed with last year is Russell Wilson. He, to me, is light years ahead of anyone on the field, and he is so smart and so, you know, it almost seems a little calculated, but just such a nice, genuine, down-to-earth, good man, and such a, I'm telling you, somebody that just has blown me away is Russell Wilson.
Wow, that's interesting.
He's impressed outside of Seattle. I think a lot of people are impressed, like we were talking about earlier with character. He's the total package. And I actually read a great piece on Bleacher Report this morning from Tyson Langland about his story going back to high school and how he was always doubted, and it was always the same question. It was always his height. But there's so many other great things about him that makes him a great person and a great quarterback. And I'd be surprised if him and Colin are not going toe-to-toe for the next 10 years.
I agree, 100%. I mean, I was there last year covering the quarterback competition between him and Flynn and Jackson, and to see what he did and to basically beat those odds and fight off that, you know, kind of that monkey that's been on his back, and that really fuels his fire, and it provides him with so much more. It's not even a chip because he doesn't view it that way, but he's so kind of gracious with what he's got, and he uses it to his advantage in such a positive way. The way that he spins that and turns that into just this kind of killer instinct on the football field is something I've never seen before.
Yeah, you got to respect a guy like that, the quiet confidence and the way he just took things over on the field with the Seahawks. And that's a veteran team, and he went in and as a mid-round pick, you know, he went in and took things over. So that's a good one. So, Michelle, it was great talking to you. You are welcome back on our show anytime. And just so you know, our network, we have 4 different female hosts. So you're definitely somebody that I'm sure our radio hosts are looking up to, and you do a great job. And I've followed your work for quite some time, and big fan of yours, actually. And I just got to tell you, you got to stop doing those handstands on the golf course.
Well, they're headstands, but I won't stop. But I appreciate you looking out for me. Anytime, you guys. Thanks so much for having me on. I
No
appreciate
problem.
it.
Thanks, you.
Michelle.
Football fans, check out ProFootballCentral.com for all the latest NFL news and analysis. Also, check out the very popular Pro Football Central radio network for awesome NFL talk around the league. Go to ProFootballCentral.com. ProFootballCentral.com.
Everybody, welcome back. Dylan DeSimone, Bleacher Report, here with my co-host Turron Davenport, Base Sportsnet. We have another guest, our second of the day, the wonderful Mindi Bach of CSN Bay Area. Thanks for joining us, Mindi.
Oh, sure. Anytime. Thanks for having me.
So we had to continue on Ladies Night. We just had a really good segment with Michelle Beisner. So we want to bring one of my other ladies that I really like in the NFL, and that's Mindi Bach. I want to bring you on and just touch base, get a little bit of your insider's viewpoint about the 49ers. Specifically, what we want to start off with is the bad news about Chris Culliver. That's bad news. Hopefully everything works out for him, but we just wanted to see if you've heard anything new on him, how everything's going.
Yeah, nothing new. We know that he went to Stanford today to have an MRI, but I think what's particularly troubling for the 49ers is that this is a second injury like this in just this week. Darius Fleming was lost for the season, pretty much doing the same thing on kickoff return, and now they lose Chris Culliver on punt return. He wasn't having any contact. It wasn't that he got mixed up with another player. He was running down as a gunner and just went down and his knee buckled, and he was in obvious pain and really upset. Trent Baalke, the general manager, happened to be there and gave him a hug as he was being carted off the field. So it seemed serious when it happened. Hopefully when things calm down, it'll be better news, but I think just the initial reaction is this is not good.
Yeah, anytime you have a knee injury like that, is definitely something, especially at that position. It's something you really have to be concerned about. But as you said, once the smoke clears, hopefully it's not as bad as what we are fearing. And I just wish him the best. I hope everything works out, because I know this is a crucial time for him as far as rebounding from the stuff from last year and getting into a contract that he's going to be seeking to get soon. So just wish him the best.
Yeah, absolutely. Just having a young defensive back who is in his third year of Vic Fangio's system, finally gaining that knowledge and knowing where to be. I mean, he played over 60% of the snaps last year for the 49ers, so this could have been a very big year for him. Hopefully it still will be, but we'll just have to see how his knee responds.
Yeah, because he's somebody that Brandon and I, we always look forward to seeing how he's going to match up. He's one of Brandon's favorite players, actually. So, yeah, we got to hope for the best. Brandon's been texting me all day trying to get updates and stuff like that. So hopefully it works out.
Well, if you get any updates before we do, you got to let us know.
Yeah, right.
Now, do you think, if this is as bad as it kind of seems to be, do you think San Francisco's kind of been prepared to endure this, and do they maybe reconsider Eric Wright?
Well, they already are reconsidering Eric Wright, which is sort of interesting because he failed the physical, but there's news that they are looking at him again. I mean, you can always retake and pass the physical. So I think Nnamdi has looked really good. Nnamdi Asomugha has looked very solid in practice, and Tremaine Brock has stepped in and took those first team reps with Culliver out when Carlos Rogers moved in to cover the slot. And so they do have options there. And I think Eric Wright, could definitely be added back to the mix if he can pass that physical, and that's what the team seems they need to do. They also, though, need to get some depth in the wide receiver core, and they're bringing in some receivers this week for workouts as well. Austin Colley's a name that's being batted around as he's being brought back for a workout. And Jim Harbaugh won't say if it's a typical workout, or he won't go into whether or not they're bringing him in specifically to fill this injured unit, because 4 wide receivers are currently out with injury. But they're still looking. The team will never stand pat. So I wouldn't be surprised if they brought in Eric Wright or a wide receiver in the next week or two.
Yeah, the thing that surprises me, you talk about the receivers, because also Lauren Robinson, I think, was there today. But I'm curious. You have an X 49er in Brandon Lloyd, who is somebody that can stretch the field. He plays the X position, which is exactly what they need. And it's interesting that they're not looking at him.
Yeah, the team stays very mum about that. I'm sure you can imagine. And if they're not interested, there's got to be a reason. I think they were thinking that, hopefully Randy Moss last year would stretch the field, and he just wasn't the Randy Moss that they needed. I mean, he brought value, but they probably were looking for a little more. So maybe there's something there with Brandon they just feel is missing.
Yeah, and it's funny because like a lot of these players have been out. Like you mentioned, 4 wide receivers being out. Has anybody kind of like which players would you say offensively have stood out to you?
So far, the rookie tight end Vance McDonald looks very solid. Chad Hall, the wide receiver, looks very good, and he's smaller in stature. He's not going to be your tall, lithe wide receiver, but he's making some good plays out there. And we asked Parrish Cox and some of the other guys about covering him, and they said he's shifty. He's a little feisty. He's not what you expect. I mean, a lot of people pigeonhole him as a Danny Amendola and Danny Woodhead type receiver, but he's making some noise out there a little bit. And sometimes Marlon Moore looks really good when he's out there, and he's shown some speed. I think they're looking for consistency from everyone. So they're individuals that are making strides, but it's still early. The team is still not full speed, game speed, and that's when you can really tell who's standing out.
Yeah, it's funny you mentioned Vance McDonald. This is another player I really, really liked. I kept telling Turron and everybody, if he had not been drafted to San Francisco, he probably would have been the number 1 tight end on a lot of other teams.
Absolutely. I think the one thing that stands out to me about Vance when you first meet him is how big he is.
Right.
He is not tall. He's not the tallest tight end in the league by any means, but at 6'5", there are taller tight ends, but when you meet him, he's probably the heaviest. He's very broad. He's one of the heavier tight ends. And he used to play defensive end, so it kind of makes sense. And with that body being broad, he's learning blocking schemes, and I think he'll be very strong there, and that he's adept at catching the ball. It's going to be very fun to see how he develops and what kind of player he develops into, because right now all signs are very positive. He's developing very well. But that's just a big body to move around, and he moves it rather quickly. So it's going to be fun to see how he does in game speed.
Yeah, that's really interesting because it's because Vance is so broad and he wasn't tall or fast like a lot of the other tight ends, but they say he could still get vertical, and with Anquan there, you have to think, who's one of the best receivers when it comes to using his broadness and his body to kind of shield the defense from the ball. Do you see him? Have you seen them together, or have any thoughts on that?
You mean Anquan and Vance together on that field?
Yeah, just the tips as a receiver, since San Francisco kind of needs the help there.
Yeah, absolutely. I haven't really noticed much how they've had an effect on the other, because I think Vance is still trying to learn this offense, as is Anquan. I mean, that's the biggest thing for him, is he's really concentrated more on what he needs to do as far as learning Colin Kaepernick's tendencies and learning the offense. So the melding right now isn't there. I think it's just seeing the individual effort, and it's only 1 week in a training camp, so everything is still pretty basic. There's nothing super high-tech or advanced going on as far as the play calling. So right now it's just doing the basics, the fundamentals, and seeing who does those well. And it's a learning process still.
You mentioned Vance McDonald's size, and that's something that I liked about him. And specifically, what I liked is how he was able to play at that size at the slot position at Rice. And you look at some of the cut-ups of him, and he's in a similar move position as Delaney Walker was. And I think that he's somebody that will come in and play right away. Believe it or not, he had 2 100-yard rushing games in college as well. So we're talking about a guy that, as you said, is very big, but clearly shows that he can move. He had some of the best measurables at the combine even. I believe it was the short shuttle. He was one of the better runners in that. So that is somebody that we really should be excited about, and he's a weapon that's going to come in and may actually be an upgrade over Delaney Walker. But you
Yeah.
mentioned you mentioned Anquan Bolden also, and I know you had the article recently about the development of the chemistry between he and Colin Kaepernick, and you said that it was something that they were working on. Is there anything in particular that you saw that stood out to you as far as what they're doing to develop this chemistry?
No, I mean, what they're really doing, we can't see, because Anquan says what's important for him is to get to know the quarterback off of the field. And
Okay.
he said, you know somebody likes and dislikes and know what they're about. He said it really does affect your play on the field. And he said he was going to work as much as he could to get to know Colin. And I was kind of laughing, saying, well, you're going to have a lot to talk about. So he's a busy guy. But, Anquan's just all about business. The one thing that just strikes you when you meet him and talk to him is he is very focused on football. He admits that. He's not a big talker. All of his young teammates want to talk to him. They want to get his advice, and he's more than willing to help and tell them, whatever he can to help. But he's also in the learning process with his team. And he said, so I need to put in the work and the effort and really get to learn Colin and read him. He said that's the biggest thing, and that just comes with time. And he said he definitely mentioned game time. He'll need game time this preseason with Colin to really see at full speed, how that works, how that relationship will work, and where he needs to be. But Colin said the one thing he's noticed about Anquan, he just puts it anywhere near him and he can get it. He really trusts Anquan with the ball. He's so physical. He said his window is so small, you just get it in that general area. And he said Anquan comes down with it 9 times out of 10. So that trust factor is already well underway from Colin.
Excellent.
Yeah. Quan showed us that in the Super Bowl, didn't he?
Yeah, he sure did. I bet they're doing better this year.
For sure.
Now, we were still touching on the receivers. Turron can attest, somebody that I'm very, very, very high on, although he's been on the roster for a few years, is Kyle Williams and his kind of opportunity to kind of use that downfield speed that he showed at Arizona State when Balky first drafted him in 2010. I think he's got a huge opportunity because I think him and Kaepernick are complementary. Have you seen their connection kind of grow this offseason?
Yeah, well, unfortunately, Kyle was rehabbing most of his off season as he was coming back from ACL surgery, and so he was put on the pump right before training camp started, and then the day training camp started, he was activated. Well, 2 days ago, he has been taken off the practice field as he's just dealing with a slight muscle strain. It's nothing serious. So, they've had some work together, but it's very minimal. But you saw last year, they had a little bit of work together. And actually, during practices, even though Alex Smith was the starter, Kyle worked a lot with Colin in practices with the twos. And, yeah, you're right. I agree with you. Kyle Williams has always been explosive. I've always been interested to see how he plays, and he does a lot more than people realize. He blocks for a receiver that's his size incredibly well. And he wants that explosion back this year. So I think that's one relationship that's really going to blossom this year if Kyle can remain healthy. And the one thing I asked Kyle about with Colin is, one of the things that Colin really needed to work on, and he self-admitted it, he did it last year a little more, is touch. Everyone knows he can throw the ball incredibly hard. I mean, that's no secret. But the one thing he really needed to develop was those touch throws, those timing throws, the throws that don't require a quarterback to zoom it in at 90 miles an hour. And I asked Kyle about that. I said, how have you seen Colin develop in that regard? He said he's light years ahead of where he was his rookie year. He said it's just 3 short years. He said it's amazing the touch he has on his ball now, and that's helped all the receivers.
Yeah, that's really good to hear because you always, you want improvement from year to year, and Kaepernick has already shown that that's going to be an area where he's going to improve. So definitely excited about that. So, next week I'm going to be out there. Hopefully I'll be able to get to the game as well, but I'm going to be at training camp. So I'm looking forward to that, and we just got to get ready to wrap up. But, hey, Dylan, did you know that Mindi Bach went to the same high school as Aaron Rodgers?
Did you really?
Yeah.
Actually, I'm going to correct you. actually we went to rival high schools, but we're from the same town.
Same town. Okay, same town. Pardon me.
Yeah.
Okay,
there are
so
only 2 high schools in Chico, and Aaron Rodgers and I went to rival high school. So we, Almond Bowl, Chico High, Almond Bowl victory that you got to go for.
oh, okay. Well, yeah, there you go. There you go. Hey, it was great talking to you, Mindi. We always like to catch up and talk a little football, so I appreciate you coming on. And thank goodness training camp is not in Stockton anymore. I know how much you like that, as you said on one of your videos. So I look forward to hopefully catching up with you next week. And it's a good thing. The season is coming up, and I have big expectations, and it's going to be a great season.
Yeah, we'll look forward to seeing you too. Travel safely. Thanks for having me on.
Will do. Thank you. All right, so we're back. Ladies' night was a great night, man. Mindi, Bach.
Michelle Beisner.
Michelle, you hear the smile in my voice still, man. It's
ear to ear, Turron.
That's right.
Like ear, man.
It is ear to ear. But yeah, Mindi just wanted us to make sure that we let everybody know that she has a really good article dropping on Tavares Gooden, a former 49er. You talk about inside linebackers and special teams guys. He was one of the better ones that we had last year, and he had retired, but it looks like he may be back. 230 pounds, 9% body fat is where he's at. And look for the article on CSN Bay Area tomorrow. Make sure you read that. And Mindi does a great job, so definitely make sure you follow her on Twitter, Michelle Beisner as well. Dylan, this was a great show. We got to talk a lot about the Rams and some specific things about the injuries on our team, the 49ers. And like always, man, I love talking shop with you. It's a great thing to do, and I'm looking forward to next week.
Yeah, same. Well said. And on that note, we'll sign off.
This has been a presentation of the Pro Football Central Network. For news, blogs, highlights, and more, log on to ProFootballCentral.com.